is by far the most incredible thing I've ever heard.
Hey there, APT Songs here, and I'm back with another music review, this time for Aaliyah's recently re-released self-titled album, Aaliyah. Now, those of you who saw my last review for her previously also just recently re-released album, One in a Million, you guys know that I said that album was average at best. I said that while I thought there were a lot of good ideas on the album and that it was definitely Timberland and Missy's first shot at getting into the industry and having a real presence, that ultimately some of those ideas weren't all the way formalized, and so that is why I was not a major fan of that album. I got a lot of backlash. I don't personally care. I was alive when she was alive when she made that album, and I still stick by the fact that for me, it was just an okay album that I have not listened to since I did that review. What I also said in that review, though, was that I felt as though her later works and the stuff that Timberland was producing later and some of the other songs that she was doing proved to be a lot better, and I was more of a fan of those things. And I said in that review that chances are I probably like the Aaliyah album a lot better, and I have proven to be correct because since that album's come out on Friday, I've heard it about 5 or 6 times. And I really had to sit and think, what is it about this album that I like so much better than the previous album that she released, which everybody says is a classic, but I personally find annoying. And here are what some of those things are. To start off with, there's a lot more variety. Yes, Timberland is still a contributor to some of the songs on this album, but he's not the only contributor. I will say, of the Timberland songs that are on here, each song that he produces knocks out the park. We Need a Resolution, More Than a Woman, I Care For You, Try Again. All of those are stellar songs. And by this point in time, it had been 5 years since the last album that he worked on with One in a Million, which I felt, again, they had some good ideas formulating, but here he's really at his full power as a beat maker, as a producer. He has a lot more variety in his tracks. The up tempos and the drum beats, even if they're slightly off at times, they still have a good rhythm to them and are a lot easier to get into and like a lot faster than on the One in a Million album. That said, she was wise in allowing other producers to come in and produce her songs and allow her to have more of a variety of sounds in this particular album. I think Eric Seitz and Rapture Stewart were some of the perfect guys to come in and really give some extra flavor to the album that maybe would not have been there if it had just been one solid producer. A lot of their production, like on songs such as Loose Rap and Extra Smooth, they have this kind of a beat to it that's like a vibe beat where you're kind of just chilling, but the drums still have a level of intensity there that still makes you want to nod your head and beat along to the groove that's being played underneath the words that Aaliyah is saying. And speaking of the words, another great thing about this album is that she has different writers. I think on the last album, a lot of the writing went to the Timberland and Missy team, which again, Missy's a great writer, and she definitely has her presence on this album with the brilliant, excellent ballad, I Care For You. But I think in terms of trying to get Aaliyah to a level of lyricism whereby the things she's saying can actually be believed, because I felt on One in a Million, she was singing about a lot of stuff where I feel like she maybe hadn't had the experience yet, and it definitely was like her trying to play a role to these other words versus having somebody come in and really write to the things that she could realistically have experienced or sing with a believability to them. So thank God that Static Major came in and wrote the bulk of these songs, because he had written Try Again and also Are You That Somebody. And so I think him being able to work on her songs and craft these narratives that she can sing believably and with a full force of her voice really, really helps this album stand out from the previous one. On this album too, we get an Aaliyah that is a lot more adult. At the time that this was released, she was 22 years old. And so that means that by this time, she can really sing about more experiences that she's experienced as a woman or that other women go through that, again, because of her age at this point, is going to be more believable in tone. So when she sings a song like Never No More, where she's talking about not wanting to be an abuse victim anymore, that is a lot more believable, sadly, more believable at that age than it would coming from a 16-year-old Aaliyah. Being at this age also allows her to show more of her sensual, sexy, little bit of naughty side, such as on songs like the infamous Rock the Boat, where she's being able to tell a lover how she wants to be loved in the bedroom without having to be overly explicit about it. And on naughtier songs such as I Can Be, where she talks about possibly wanting to be the side woman to a guy that already has a wife or a girlfriend at home. Not subject matter that I necessarily agree with, but again, at that age, it's a lot more believable than if that were a song that were to make it on something like One in a Million. Ultimately, honestly, the reason I think I like this album a lot more is because there's a lot more upbeat tracks on this one than there were on the previous album. I felt with the last album, there were a lot of songs that were slow grooving but had fast drums. They were trying to be fast and slow at the same time, and I couldn't tell if I was supposed to nod my head really fast or just kind of listen and groove, and it honestly annoyed me to death. But on this album, the songs that have the upbeat grooves, you know you're supposed to be dancing to them, you're supposed to be nodding your head. The ones that are slower ballads, there's definitely a huge contrast between this is a ballad and this is a faster song. And that just hits my sensibilities a lot better than when I can't tell the difference. And that's not to say that there isn't any part of this album that I feel could have been worked better. Again, I think a lot of it's just personal preference, but I find oftentimes Aaliyah's ballad songs, they're not my most favorite thing. And so in this album, same thing. Her ballad songs, it's not that they're bad, it's just not my personal flavor. That does not mean that I don't recognize that the writing in them and the subject matter is great. It just means that I would be more apt to skip those tracks and get back to some of the faster grooving tracks. But like I said, this album's a lot better. I played it 4 or 5 times already, and I'm probably gonna listen to it again. Like, it's just a nonstop groove fest. It's got subject matter about loving, about loss, about caring, about being a modern woman and knowing how to stand up for yourself and the things that you want. And it's just a jam-packed good time. Way much better than her One in a Million album. Again, for those of you that like that album, I'm sorry that you don't agree with my opinion on that album, but I don't agree with yours. I thought it was an okay album, and I think that a lot of the ideas that were established in that album come to full fruition on this album, and it's all for the better. But hey, let me know your thoughts. Did you like this album better than her previous album, or did you like the other one better? How do you feel about Aaliyah and her legacy in general? And are you looking forward to her upcoming posthumous album, which is going to finally, hopefully, be released this year with all new material that we have not heard before? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll be back with you for another review. If you have an album that you'd like to see me review on this channel, write it in the comments as well, and I'll be sure to get to it. That's it. I'm ABT Songs, and I'll catch y'all later. Peace.